Hello, and welcome to Autology, the weekly podcast that brings you the latest on automotive technology. I'm Anna Buettner, and this week's episode is called CERAWeek 2023, the role of battery electric vehicle technology in the energy transition. Here with me are today's guests, Graham Evans, Director for Electrification Technology Research, and Dr. Richard Kim, Associate Director of Battery Technology Research. Both are part of S&P Global Mobility's supply chain technology and aftermarket group. Hello, and thank you for joining this week's episode of Autology.
Hello, Anna. Thanks very much for having us. Great to be here.
Hello, Anna. Thanks for having us.
Of course, of course. Good to have you here. So, this week's podcast is all about this week's CERAWeek conference held in Houston, Texas, billed as the world's premier energy event and described by the Financial Times as the Davos of energy. CERAWeek is in its 41st year. This year's key theme was navigating a turbulent world, energy, climate, and security. And Graham, to start with you, could you tell us a little bit about the scope and remit of CERAWeek as a conference and S&P Global Mobility's presence there, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be glad to. So CERAWeek's fundamentally an energy gathering. I think historically, that's traditionally been the remit, and it continues to this day. So we have keynote speeches from many of the major energy CEOs, oil companies, gas companies, etc. But I would say the political discourse is a major element to the discussion. Of course, the two things are interdependent. Naturally, with this year we've had the likes of John Kerry speaking. We've had the U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. She's here. So I would say the conference does a really nice balancing act of presenting what might seem, let's say, conflicting demands of energy need and climate need, and then also the policy that shapes them. So this is a really nice, I'd say, really nice opportunity to bring mobility into the discussion. Of course, how we move around is naturally it's a huge part of all of this. So the discussion of electric vehicles is never too far away, and it's exciting that we in S&P Global Mobility can contribute to this.
Okay, great. And Richard, can you maybe share a few reflections on how the experience has been for you and the key themes you picked up?
Absolutely. Thank you, Anna. Personally, this is the first time for me to join CERAWeek. I found this event is a massive energy conference with over 7,000, close to 8,000 participants from 85 countries, including 1,500 CEOs or chair-level executives, over 12,000 speakers, including myself, and 300 media representatives. It was a privilege to join this as a moderator to discuss about battery supply chain. Overall, the conference focused on the energy transition and overcoming bottlenecks. And I would like to highlight that permitting is more becoming relevant topic for mining discussions, especially in terms of the battery supply chain implications. And I can speaking talking about the IRA. IRA was a major theme. It was about exploring how money will be spent, where it will be spent, and whether it will have the desired effect. I would encourage automotive industry to get engaged with this, so that we can evolve together with energy industry to contribute to build a sustainable society.
Okay, fantastic. So it sounds like a broad scope, but some topics that we are focused on and have data to support insights on. Could you each tell me a bit about the scope of your panel discussions?
Yeah, absolutely, Anna. I'll go first. I've been fortunate to chair two panels here at CERAWeek, and both of them on the topic of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Slightly different angle to the two panels. I'd say the first one was more from a consumer perspective. Talking a little bit about the uptake of electric vehicles to date and what we know about how consumers have been charging. We also discussed quite a lot around policy and how it's been positioned to support the installation of the charging infrastructure that we need. be it in the domestic domain, the public domain, the workplace domain, etc. We then discussed a little bit about technology developments and how they can improve the charging experience for consumers and just improve this perception. We're also quite keen to bring into this discussion, equity in the EV transition and the idea that there needs to be plentiful access to charging for people of all, regardless of income, regardless of geographic location, to make sure that EVs are available for all. And yeah, really nice balance to the discussion. We had the University of California, San Diego represented, Nissan USA, and then the smart EV charging and energy management software provider Drives also, who have a huge amount of information, data on how people are charging, where they're charging, and what the common issues were. The second panel that I've just finished this morning was a bit more from the perspective of building out the infrastructure and how we scale up. So, what are the challenges in the deployment of infrastructure to encourage adoption? Again, future advancements in charging technology. What is the impact therefore on these stakeholders who are responsible for getting the infrastructure actually in the ground? And then again, a bit like Richard mentioned about permitting, how can we really speed up the process of getting infrastructure in the ground? This was a really kind of common talking point, and great to get feedback from people who are in the business of doing this about how it can be speeded up and what the challenges are. So in terms of participants, we had an OEM, we had Ford Motor Company talking about this from their perspective and the uptake of their vehicles. Drives again also part of the discussion, but then we're also lucky to have the utility and energy provider Exelon, who have a very big presence in the US, and then I would say a company that I didn't know a huge amount about, but are one of those kind of big players that are quietly going about their business sometimes. Bechtel are an engineering, construction, and project management company who are doing a lot of this infrastructure installation. So really interesting to get their view. This is a company that have worked on projects like the Hoover Dam and the Channel Tunnel. They're not strangers to big construction projects, but they're getting involved in the installation of EV charging infrastructure too.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and Richard, what about your session? Could you please tell us a bit about the topic and the speakers you were talking to?
Sure, thanks, Anna. My session was titled Electric Vehicle Battery Demand Constraints in Supply Chain. And I was joined by three esteemed speakers, mainly from Outstream, of course. It was kind of shame that we couldn't have electric vehicle manufacturers or battery cell manufacturers, but it was a very good opportunity to listen to upstream market perspective. So I was joined by Frank Fanon, who is a managing director at Fanon Global Advisor, a consulting firm. He served the U.S. as Assistant Secretary of State for the Energy Resources. And another panel was Andrea Vocari, who is head of responsible production and sustainability at Freeport McMoran, which is a copper mining company. And lastly, Christopher Skate, who is the current minister for the economy of Quebec, Canada. So, well, his focus areas on reducing governmental red tape and promoting buy local and buy Quebec initiatives. So when it comes to Andrea from the Kappa company, highlighted that the lengthy timeline, which takes 15 to 20 years to mass produce minerals from new mines because of the permitting, financing, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And when it comes to Chris, he as a minister of Quebec, he emphasized on importance of responsible mining and CO2 implications pretty much a lot. And because of those benefits, Ultium Chem, the one of the biggest cathode active materials, decided to build a chem plant in Quebec, just for audience's reference. And the last but least, the Frank has a broad experience in upstream market. Therefore, he could shed lights on all the various topics on government perspectives, environmental production, and etc. So I like his expression about whether we want the raw material to be fair trade coffee or blood diamonds. So if we want to make the materials to be more environment, then we need to have a responsible and transparent supply chain, which means fair trade coffee. And if we cannot track all the transparent sourcing and the environmental factor of the minings, then it will become like blood diamonds. And he also mentioned about whether consumers will pay thousands of dollars more for the electric vehicles with responsibly sourced materials. So all those discussions were very very valuable, and then it was I wanted to take that implication to our automotive industry.
All right, interesting crowd for sure. And it seems you were both covering really pertinent issues and getting down to the detail in the critical questions here. Can you share some of your summary reflections from the session? And maybe Graham, maybe you can go first on this question.
Yeah, no problem, Anna. Yeah, great. I would say from the first session that I was chairing, I would say the kind of the key takeaways for me is we're still understanding and learning at the moment how and where users charge and for how long. Almost a kind of there's like say a human behavioral element to this in the sense of we might think we know how people will charge and choose to charge, but actually the data we can learn a lot from the data that's been gathered so far and about what people are doing in terms of their charging and their routine. And it's still quite hard to know how this will change over time. We the panel all acknowledged that we're still learning about consumer behavior and really this next generation of electric vehicle adopters may well come to this differently. They may well charge at different times in different places, treat their EVs in a different way versus the early adopters. Reliability is definitely improving, I would say, primarily through superior software management and fast issue resolution over the air. So the consumers are getting a better charging experience. Doran Frankel from Drives alluded to the fact that only 2% of issues that arise with charging stations now require a call out. So someone to actually physically go and repair something associated with the hardware. So it's predominantly software issues and his company is pioneering the fact that these can be resolved over the air. But of course, 2% is still too many. I would say policy has been helpful and will continue to be helpful, especially to support uptake of electric vehicles. And really, we're keen to major on this point around access to charging in poorer communities. If we want people of all backgrounds, of all financial let's say all financial means to make this transition and buy into this transition to electric vehicles, then access to charging in these communities is going to be essential to ensure that that's the case. I think for the second session, the key takeaway, I think for me and many of the people listening was that there's many stakeholders here and perhaps some unfamiliar names involved in the build out of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. But I was really quite encouraged by the fact that everyone was working together to get things done. It didn't require my panel to bring these people together. They already knew each other. They already worked with each other in different ways. But certainly building scale is a challenge, and this challenge is different for each of the different stakeholders. And in many respects, this is a classic supply chain problem. Where will the weakest link in the supply chain be? Will this be what prevents mass installation of electric vehicle infrastructure? And Bechtel mentioned, they talked about skilled labor being a challenge. Where do they recruit the people from to get stuck in and do these projects? They also mentioned, a huge requirement for things like copper in the transformers that will be the supply of the high voltage cabling, let's say. So these are challenges that they're wrestling with, and perhaps sometimes they're not such common talking points in the general discourse around electric vehicles. We also alluded to the fact that good data is required, right? And obviously, for a company like ourselves, this is great to hear. But obviously, companies like Exelon, they're making huge investments here in order to deliver megawatt level charging. The idea that if you want to put in a fast charging hub and you want 10 electric vehicles to charge at 150 kilowatts simultaneously, you need 1.5 megawatts of power, and that's a significant investment and a significant challenge to install that. And that's without mentioning, for example, medium heavy duty commercial vehicle fleets. A depot. If we want to electrify 20 articulated trucks that will be, I don't know, delivering goods. And these are the power requirements of these are going to be in the megawatts. 20 megawatts is like a small town. So if they're going to invest in this and they're going to spend the money to deliver this type of infrastructure, they need good data to understand where and when and how, and make sure that the money is spent on the right technology at the right time.
Great. Okay. And what about you, Richard? How did it go, and what did you come away with from your sessions?
Okay, thank you, Anna. So I found two significant challenges through the panel. The first one is the lengthy timeline, which takes, as I said, 15 to 20 years from deposit discovery to the mass production of the raw materials, mainly because of the permitting, financing, infrastructure, and etc. Um, you know, even though even though all those challenges, I hope that the industry could discover effective measures to shorten this time so that all the auto industry can help us create a sustainable society by selling more electric cars. And another challenge was ESG, responsible and environmentally conscious production. While it is very, very critical to streamline the supply of battery raw materials to uptake electric vehicle cells, the production must never jeopardize human rights or destroy the environment. And at the same time, in order to achieve the green society, the green energy should be used in the production process, and a transparent and traceable supply chain should be established to achieve this goal. Personally, I came here hoping for more optimism than pessimism in terms of the access to the metals. But I felt like I got lots of homework to solve with auto industry stakeholders in order to bring more materials faster. So we discussed about how what sort of advice the panelists can give to the automakers or the cell makers and the other constituent material suppliers. They suggested that they want the direct or more engaged communication with the miners, so that they can fast up the whole process and bring more the materials faster than ever. So all those are the implications that I bring from the panel. And as I earlier said, there should be some implications to our day-to-day work. We do research battery raw materials, and we publish the data from mining to all the way out to cell manufacturing. Whenever we found the articles or announcements from the press, we think about when we want to reflect those new findings into the forecast. So this was a very, very challenging topic, but we could learn the timeline from the discussion, like 15 to 20 years. But obviously, we also need to monitor whether governments would like to ease the regulations or permitting process in order to allow the industry to bring the materials faster. So we will monitor all those things, and then we will try to reflect all the findings to our forecasting. This is a kind of homework for me.
Okay, awesome. Sounds like lots of great conversations initiated then, and plenty for the audience to digest. Any final reflections before we wrap up?
Yeah, maybe a couple from my side. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to the CERAWeek organisers for having us as S&P Global Mobility. It's a real privilege to be involved in such a conference, such a grand event, and such a compelling and interesting event. It almost gives us access to a new group of stakeholders, a new customer base that I think can benefit from our insights, and I think we can add a lot to the discussion. I think the battery electric vehicle technology debate and will continue to be important. I think it's in this intersection between how we move around and how we power the energy transition. Battery electric vehicles are really important and if you like the technology of choice moving forward. So I think this discussion can and will continue. And yeah, maybe just a quick nod to the other speakers from S&P Global Mobility. We've been covering topics and straddling decarbonisation, propulsion for heavy trucks, hydrogen as a fuel, future vehicle taxation. So these are all critical topics that have been covered by some of our S&P Global Mobility colleagues throughout the week here in Houston.
Agreed. Yeah, anything from you, Richard?
Yeah, if I may, yeah, automotive industry used to be a consumer of gas and diesel. I mean, oil industry. Energy sector wants drivers drive more and more in order to generate more revenue, right? But now the scene seems to change as we make a transition from internal combustion engine to electric vehicles. We need variety of raw materials other than oil now, and electric cars need electricity, which impacts on energy sector. I mean the utility. Someday we might put electric vehicles to the grid as a power source, but now electric vehicle is a just electricity consumer. So all those entails that there is we get more and more connections with the energy sector. So I thought, in this sense, I thought CERAWeek seems to be a very good opportunity for auto industry sectors to join. And then, I found that we need to have a more communication with the energy sector for the mutual benefits.
Great. Thank you both. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. A big thank you to you, Graham and Richard, for joining Autology and sharing your insights.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Anna.
No
Thanks for having us.
problem. Thank you, Anna.
And thank you to all you listeners for tuning in as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode at our etology at spglobal.com email. And you can find out much more at autotechinsight.ihsmarket.com. Don't forget to hit all the subscribe, follow, and like buttons to stay on track with the latest Autology podcasts. And we look forward to you joining us again in the next episode. Bye for now.